Today I'm going to demonstrate how to create the different card deck suits in Blender. So first what I am going to do is create the mesh for the diamond. So I want to create a cube and rotate it to form a bit of a diamond shape. And now that I have a cube, I need to make sure I can select the back vertices as well, because if I'm looking from the top view, I'll only select one vertex, and then when I try to move it, I won't be moving the entire diamond. So I have to press this button down here to make sure I can select through vertices, then press C to go into circle select, right click to exit that selection. And now we have these all selected. We could have also used box select or anything like that, but I prefer circle select. And now I'm going to press scale and Shift Z so it doesn't scale along the Z axis, which is up and down because I don't want to make this any less tall. Now I'm going to hold Control to make it scale precisely because I just like to be precise like that. And there we go. Now it's at a very nice diamond shape. That one was obviously the simplest one, so we'll drag that one out of the way and create the heart now, the second simplest one. So let's create a cylinder, and for this one, cylinder is the basic shape. I like to think about basic shapes when I'm making things, but we need to kind of drag the cylinder at 2 points. So how can we do that? Well, for me, probably the easiest way to make a smooth drag is proportional editing. So I'll press O to turn that on, and you can see this little thing popped up down here. And I'm going to change this to sharp because that can make a point, and that's what we need on hearts. So let's drag it downwards and maybe scale up a little bit using the mouse wheel. And I'm pretty happy with that, but I think I want to edit the top just a little bit more. So I'm going to mouse wheel down just to scroll a little bit bigger. And now I'm going to, I think this is a little too pointy, so I'm going to go upwards just a little with that. There, I'm pretty happy with that. There you go, that's our heart. And now you'll notice that both of these are 3D, but there's actually an easier way to make simple 3D shapes like this, because if we have just the same top and bottom, just kind of a cutout model of something where it just has some height, there's actually a modifier for doing that. So what I'm going to do with this next shape, which is going to be a spade, is I'm going to start with a plane, not a cube. Now, a spade is a pretty complicated shape, so I'm not going to want to do the same thing to both sides. Like when I do something over here, I don't want to have to do it to this side as well. So what I'm going to do is add a modifier called a mirror modifier. And what this does is it will mirror whatever I'm doing on this side over to that side. So the center of the object, this point right there, will be the position over which it mirrors along the x-axis, which is this red axis. So what I want to do is grab these and pull them out, turn off proportional editing with O, so that they're right along the center. An easy way to do that is to turn on clipping, and then when you drag this out, it won't let you drag it past the center. Now we know that those are exactly in the right spot. And now it sticks them there since we have clipping on and we can't move them, which is good. I'm happy with that for this model. Now, since a spade, the top of a spade is kind of a triangular shape almost, what I want to do is get rid of one of these vertices. And I want to get rid of this one out here and merge it into this one. So I could do that two ways. I could delete this one using X and clicking on vertices, select these three, and press F to make a face. And that is a good method. Or I could have pressed Alt-M with this one selected last and choose at last, and now we are done. So either way you want to use, it just depends on the situation and your preference. So now I'm going to press Control R to make a ring cut. But you'll notice there's a problem. Because of the way that I have these merged, I can't really make a ring cut easily. So what I'm actually going to do, I think, to solve that problem is unmerge them, basically. So what I'm going to do is press V Selected vertex has no edges, faces, pairs attached. Okay, that's weird. I don't know why it can't be ripped. Ugh. Okay, well, when you run into problems, you just remake things, right? So what I'm actually going to do is do this and press X to remove the edges. Now what I want is a ring cut, and a ring cut has to be kind of on square geometry. It doesn't work off of square geometry, which can get annoying, but it's okay. So drag this up and hold Control to snap it, and press F to make a face. So now that we have our square geometry back, what I'm going to do is press Control R and scroll up with the mouse wheel, then left click to choose the amount I want, then right click to say that I don't want to move them at all. And then there they are. Now I'm going to turn back on proportional editing with O and change it off of sharp to smooth and drag it in like that. Now that I have the ring cuts I want, I'm going to merge these two. And now I have the top of my spade. Now to make the bottom, what I'm actually going to do is extrude this out into a nice kind of round shape. There are some other potential options. I could create a circle, but I'm going to choose the extrusion method because I think it's the cleanest. So I'll extrude it down to there about, create one ring cut there and one more here. And now drag this in and turn off proportional editing and drag just this last one in a bit more. Edit this until it's just about how I want it. There we go, that's probably about the shape of my spade. Now if I want to add the bottom section, I can press E and grab it down there and splay it out there a little bit. Now this object I think is not smooth enough for me, so what I'm actually going to do is add a subdivision surface modifier, and that kind of makes it nice and smooth edges. But there's a problem. I don't want this edge down here to be smooth, so if I go into edit mode, I can actually press Control E and press mark sharp right there. And I actually think the reason that didn't work is because it's just on a vertex. So I'll do that in a second and you'll see what I mean. So now it's just a 2D shape. What we want to do is add some surface to it. So what I'm going to do is add a solidify modifier. What that will do is add a layer of thickness. Now that's a really thin layer. So what I want to do to make it thick enough is change this to about 2, which is the size of our other shapes, I think. And now we have thickness. Now that we have some thickness, what I'm actually going to do is apply these modifiers so that I actually have the shape here. This isn't necessary. You can do it in other ways, but I would prefer to apply it. And now I can, now that I have this shape, I can do the editing I want. So let's drag this one out a little bit. Oops, since there's no mirror, I need to do it to both sides. Sometimes what people do is they actually apply the mirror so they can do editing that they want, and then they bring it back, but I'm not going to do that for this tutorial. That's a little bit unnecessarily complicated, as long as you know you can do it. So anyway, let's say that's our shape that we want. And there we go. Now let's move on to the clubs. Now I could use basically the same method as I used for the spades to make a club, with a plane and just editing it until I have it the way I want it. But I think what I'm actually going to do is add a mirror modifier as usual. You almost always want a mirror modifier if you want both sides of your mesh to be the same. Turn on clipping, drag this out, and right now I'm going to create the stem. Okay, so the stem at the bottom of the club. So let's drag it down here to the bottom and bring these up a bit. Maybe bring that in. And there we go. Now that I have the stem, I can work on the top. So what is that made out of? It's basically made out of 3 circles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my cursor over here and create a circle. Now that we have the mirror modifier, you can see that the circle goes to the other side. Now this is an important note. You can add shapes in edit mode and they will automatically be in this object. You don't have to press Control Join or Control J to join or anything because they're already here. So now what I'm going to do is drag this over here, maybe scale it up a little bit, undo that. And maybe that's a good scale. Okay, so now I'm going to want them to come together about here, but before I do that, I'm going to create the top circle. Now, since this circle is going to be going in here, you can see all these vertices in the middle aren't needed anymore. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get rid of those before I put it together, just so that I don't need to worry about them. And now I can press B to box select and drag that in there, and press F to add a face. Alright, now probably scale this down a little bit so it's about the same size as the other ones. Alright, there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to merge these together. So this middle geometry right here, if I select that, press L for link select, that selects the section of mesh that you have your mouse over. If I move them in, you can see that about that much geometry isn't going to be needed here, but then these are also overlapping, so that's not going to be needed. And these are overlapping, so that's not going to be needed. So what I'm actually going to do is use the circle select tool to remove all of this geometry that isn't needed. So press C, left click on a vertex to select it, and right click to finish your selection. And then press X to delete those. I'll press X to delete this vertex and X to delete that vertex. And now we have it about the way I want it. But what I want to do is these vertices are also unnecessary. So I'm going to delete those. And now I'm going to join these, Alt-M, to merge at the center. And I'm going to join these, Alt-M, to merge at last, so that it merges up there. There we go. Now we have a pretty nice boundary here. So I will press Alt and right click to select this whole edge, and Shift and click to select that, and press F to add a face. Now this is a pretty clean geometry here. You can see there's no overlapping vertices or anything like that. So you can kind of think of what shapes do I need to create this mesh? What pieces do I not need that would be overlapping because I don't need anything overlapping? And how can I join the two together? So I deleted the pieces I didn't need, and then I joined them together at the spots that they needed to be joined using Alt-M. So now that we have this mesh and it's flat, we can, of course, add our solidify modifier, set its thickness to 2 because that's the same as the rest of our shapes, and there we go. Now we have a hearts, diamonds, clubs, and spades. Now, one note, let's say we don't want this heart to be that small because it seems a bit too small. If we want to scale it up, if I press S and just scale it like this, you'll notice that these scales here change. And that means it's not really changing the size of the geometry, it's saying the object size is still supposed to be the same, but we're just making this instance of the object bigger. That's not what we want. If we go into edit mode and select it all, and press S, and then press Shift Z so we don't scale along the Z axis, and then bring it to the size and position we want it. Now you'll notice the scale is still 1 because we did it in edit mode, which is good. There's another way to fix that. Let's say I still want to make it bigger, but I don't want to go into edit mode. I can scale it, then press Control A scale, and it sets that back to 1. But you basically, if this is the default size, you want that to say 1. That's just a pro tip. So I hope that helps. I hope you too can get to learn creating some simple geometry easily as well. There are a whole bunch of little tools like extruding using mirror modifiers that can make things actually pretty easy. So I hope this is professional enough. Thanks.